My name is James Hanig. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Department of Public Works and staffing this meeting. Thanks you all for joining the Bike Ped Task Force meeting today. Before we get started, I just want to get through a few administrative items here. Closed captioning is available on the desktop version of Microsoft Teams. To enable the captioning, just click on the three dots at the top of the window and click on Turn on Live Captions. Unfortunately, its captioning is not as reliable for the web browser version of Teams. If you would like to follow American Sign Language interpretation, please pin Jill or Derek by clicking the three dots next to their names and then click Pin. I'm going to drop the agenda in here. And with that, we're also recording the meeting, mostly for note-taking purposes. And with that, I will start with roll call. Caressa Givens.
Present.
Kevin Kushel is excused. Mitch Henke.
Present.
Thank you. Montavious Jones.
I'm here.
Oh, great. Thank you, Montavious. Claude Crosscheck.
Here.
All right. Nicholas Lajoie might be excused. He might be able to join for a little bit. Dan Rufus. Excused. Cynthia Tellez.
Present.
All right. And Andy Tillman. Excused. You do have quorum, and I'll hand it over to you, Caressa.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us this evening. I am moving to approve September's minutes. I just need a second, please.
I can second.
All right. Thank you. So the last time everyone was together, I wasn't able to come, and thankfully Kevin stepped in. He's a great vice chair, and now Kevin's not with us today, so I'm holding down the fort for everyone, per usual. And I just wanted to bring up updates on the American Recovery Act funding in relationship to bicycle pedestrian safety in general, safety in the public right of way, and what's come of it. And please feel free to fill in the gaps. I've done my best to look at small committee and common council approval of some funding in regards to the topic. Now, the reason why I am bringing this up, as you may recall, is that this group issued a letter to the Finance and Personnel Committee advocating for the mayor's summer plan, which I believe included around $6 million for tackling reckless driving.
Oh, looks like we might have lost Caressa. Give her a minute.
Okay, that's strange. I have no idea how that worked out. Pardon me. I guess I'll just go on by saying that I think that what has come out of this ask is fairly close to what active transportation advocates have supported and needed. On September 2nd, the Finance and Personnel Committee motion to uphold essentially the mayor's summer plan ask, which included, I think, $1.2 million for police motorcycle and overtime, as well as technology. That would go towards Milwaukee Police Department's traffic safety unit. In addition, $1 million for major projects, $1 million for residential projects. I'm reading off a list, that's why I'm not making eye contact. And then also $1.8 million for rapid implementation, and $1.2 million for a speed limit change, which would include community outreach. Let's see, that's somewhere around the vein of $6 million. I'm not going to lie, this was heavily debated. Scott Spiker, Alderman Scott Spiker, was very aggressive and wanted to be assured that particularly the speed study and the speed limit reduction, which is major streets at 30 going down to 20, or was it just 25 streets at 25 miles per hour going down to 20? I don't remember. However, that was heavily debated, and an amendment was put forward by Alderman Spiker to take that $1.2 million away from the total. He was hoping to get some kind of DPW assessment or a vetting of the need for such a line item. That motion failed, and the whole package moved to council on the 21st. And again, Alderman Scott Spiker came back and tried to reduce the entire $6 million down to $1.8 million, asking that the council hold for 3 weeks until some of these line items were vetted, including the speed limit reduction efforts, and I believe major and residential projects. The council collectively was disinterested in this amendment and moved the entire file forward for approval. So if anyone has anything else to fill in there, that's what I've got. Sometimes I have to watch these meetings multiple times, but those are the details. I would add too that to Alderman Spiker's concern about whether that amount of money is or is not enough, and that we needed more time to vet. I would say from my experience, no offense to DPW, I also think that it's a good number because our DPW is actually not that big. I don't feel like they have tons of capacity, and often they have to contract for work. And I think that this is a good number to start off with, so that you're not spending the money that you have to do the work. But that's my personal opinion. So there's that update, and I don't know if anyone has anything to add, questions to ask, anything that you want to advocate for, or I should say advise on.
So I would just like to ask, so this is the details, but what's the 10,000 foot view here? What does this mean? What's going to happen with these funds?
That's a great question. So, James, I'm not sure if you have access to the mayor's proposals, summer plan proposal. They sent out essentially a summary, and maybe if he can access it and share it with you all, because I believe it's a public document. A lot of that funding is going towards improving conditions in the public right-of-way for pedestrian safety, and particularly looking at the pedestrian plan that has been published by the city of Milwaukee, I believe in 2018, and aggressively attacking that plan and, putting those infrastructure elements on the ground. James, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me. I can try to look, but I don't want you waiting for me. And just to be clear, are you looking for the budget proposal or the ARPA proposal?
The ARPA.
Okay.
It was from the mayor's ARPA summer plan. What I'll do is, if James doesn't find it, maybe he might find it by the end of our time together. But I will look for the document and share it with you, Claude. But it really is infrastructure heavy and focuses a lot on the multimodal experience. And I would say primarily the pedestrian experience. So we're talking about rapid implementations, especially in established and emerging business corridors, and also looking at where crashes are occurring across the city. In our the pedestrian plan also has a top 10 most dangerous corridors in the city of Milwaukee, and where there are local streets. I believe that's something that the city is going to attack. Meaning put the infrastructure down to increase safety.
And by infrastructure, you were talking about physical improvements as opposed to.
That's correct.
As opposed to snow removal efforts, as opposed to those other kinds of things. This is infrastructure, meaning physical improvements.
This is infrastructure meaning physical improvements. I think that when it comes to snow removal, that wasn't particularly mentioned in detail. But also the mayor's plan didn't actually point out any particular corridors that were going to be addressed. Mostly just focused on the pedestrian plan as a way to, as a guiding lens to implement that work. Any other questions or comments? Oakley dokley. I think that we'll then move on to item number 4, which is update from the Membership and Bylaws Working Group regarding enabling legislation. Now, Kevin has been working pretty hard with Kathy over at LRB. Kathy's been very helpful to us in trying to change our enabling legislation and become a bike pedestrian advisory committee. But it's not just the change in the name, but it's also the composition of the group as well as its responsibilities. He sent over a document that he asked all of us to edit. Myself and Montavious and Kevin and Kathy and James all sat down and worked together at the last bylaws and membership committee meeting to provide an editable document for all of you. I did not see any changes in the tracking from anyone. I did get an email, Claude. I got your email. I want to say I'm almost positive that what you edited was an older version. For example, there was some items that I knew that you had actually said, we should omit this, that we had already omitted. I will say it would be helpful, a couple of things, and not just to you, to everyone. One, it is very helpful to do any editing within the document virtually. That's very helpful. And 2, if you do send me, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes James knows things happen by the skin of your teeth, and he hangs in there with me in getting the agenda out. But for a document of this size, it's really helpful to have this information at least 24 to 48 hours ahead of time, so I can compile it all into one comprehensive document. If I've got written copies over here, other copies over there, it's just, I can do it, but it takes me a little bit more time. So if anyone has any thoughts, I'll move on. If anyone has any thoughts about this existing document, and any questions, please let me know, because what we'd like to do is vote today to move it towards essentially getting a common council sponsor. We have to get a sponsor in order to get it into a committee. I think it will probably be either Public Works or Public Health and Safety, and then on to full council to change some of these really important elements within the document. One in particular is the group's comprisal, and another big chunk of it is the responsibilities and duties of the group. So have at it, open discussion, questions for me. I'll try to answer them the best I can. And don't be shy, raise your hand, because I'm making notes as I go along here. Sometimes it's challenging for me to get everything that's in the chat. So let me
I would
see.
just say, this is Claude. I endorse what's here. I think there's a few tweaks that could be made. But I don't think anything major, let's put it that way. I do question why there were 2 items deleted. One was reviewing and recommending policies, procedures, plans, regulations, and other processes that support the pedestrian and bicycle plans. Was that review or deleted because it was redundant, you thought, or what was why wouldn't we want to do that?
We hung on that topic for quite some time, and we did feel that it was redundant. For instance, if you look at under duties and powers, item B, item B is review the policies, programs, acts and orders, design standards and guidelines, or make determinations of city agencies to the bicycle pedestrian infrastructure and make recommendations to improve the same.
Mhm.
And the committee shall prioritize, assign, and monitor various actions to support implementation of the city's bicycle and pedestrian plans, including but not limited to. I felt, or collectively, we felt like there was a lot of similar talk.
Okay, all right, and that makes some sense to me. So, yeah, I do think I reviewed the 827 draft, but if like, I'll be happy to put my comments into the Google Docs document that you have.
That would be really helpful, and I apologize. When I got your message, I got it, shortly to
I know,
to
and
the
that,
start.
don't
So
apologize. That was my fault, not yours.
I may have mistook the draft that you were looking at. I just saw that you scratched out the item that was particularly addressing, I think it was like safe routes to school or something. And we had also agreed that was quite specific for such a piece of legislation. So I thought, maybe Claude was looking at a different version. But yeah, it would be great if you can throw those comments in there. That would be so wonderful. I appreciate it.
I don't think it's anything that's earth shattering. It's just.
No, I don't think so.
So,
yeah.
so I think we could vote on it today if everybody else is comfortable with it.
Anyone else? Any other member want to make any comments or suggestions now?
Carissa, one question for you is, depending on how you want to handle the agenda item, do you want me to bring up the, share my screen and show the draft version, or were you looking more for a general conversation before getting into details?
You can bring it up and we can go through it, especially for those who are chiming in, who haven't received the document. And, in terms of details, as James is pulling this up, as I mentioned, one of the major components here, one of the big differences, I believe, is onboarding an entire resident body, and working with city advisors. For example, a great example is Rebecca Rabatten, is the ADA coordinator for the city of Milwaukee. Rebecca is not a voting member, but Rebecca sits in often and advises us on the work that we do. And Rebecca's voice is very important, especially in representing the persons with disabilities. So other people from DCD or DPW or public health, they all have the opportunity to sit in to advise the group. However, the voting members would be residents. So that's a big deal.
Okay, so I'm not sure, I'm sorry, Caressa, I'm not sure I understood that. So the representative from DCD and DPW are all non-voting members, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
But they're still with us and advising us and giving us all the deets.
So there's 9 voting members and 5 non-voting members.
Yes.
Okay.
And there was another note that I think I saw from Claude that said something, if you scroll down to terms of office, thank you. Claude mentioned something regarding making sure that we put that it's committee appointed by the mayor and the common council president. I kind of have to tease that out post meeting, but it's essentially both bodies, whether they do collectively all members or some, or split up those appointments. We have to discuss that. But another quick note before I call on Rebecca is that I think, Claude, you mentioned serving for term of 3 years, but no more than 6. Was that something that you said?
I did say that, and I guess that's something we probably should discuss.
Sure.
I've been on this committee for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure that that's healthy or not. So to me, new blood always is helpful, and we certainly had new blood over the years. But do we want to establish a term limit?
I think it's a good question, and I would say, I don't know if Kathy is with us or James can speak to that. Are we able to indicate that in this enabling legislation? I assume that we can, and if we can, I'll open it up to members to ponder.
I don't see Kathy on the call today, and I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure you can set those terms in the legislation. And I should have mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, if people do have questions or want to participate, members or guests today, just raise your hand with the little raise your hand function, or put your question or comment in the chat, and we'll make sure to call on you and ask any follow-up questions.
I'm definitely making a note of that, Claude, and if anybody wants to discuss that, that's fine. Otherwise, I can call on Rebecca. Speak now.
I'd like to discuss the term limits.
Okay.
One, I'd like to figure out how we would proceed with, let's say we wanted to put the term limits in here. Are we going to proceed with the amendment vote to the current draft legislation for each thing we want to add or take out, or how are we going to do this?
I think that it's appropriate to formalize the situation. If you want to amend the document to propose this term max, I think that that's good. Are we, should Claude essentially move to amend and then we discuss and then decide? I forget how this.
Yes, that's normally how the council works. Somebody will make an amendment, and they'll discuss the amendment, then they'll vote on the amendment.
Yes. Claude, would you like to amend?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we should consider term limits of 6 years.
Okay. All right. Claude makes a motion to amend the current document to.
Claude made a motion to consider. Are you sure you just want to consider, Claude, or you actually want to amend?
Well, I'm not married to anything here. I'm
Okay.
interested in hearing other people's thoughts. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this probably isn't going to mean a whole lot to a whole lot of people. But to me, I always like an escape route. I don't like to feel like I have to serve until I'm totally worn out, So it's nice to have term limits in that regard. And secondly, I think it's important to get new blood. So there's two good reasons for it, in my view.
Okay, so he's making a motion to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I second
Thanks,
the motion to
Montavious.
consider.
What's that?
I said I'll second the motion to consider.
Okay. Have at it.
All right, so we're considering. I don't think we should do it because I would hate to lose good people on the board to term limits. I'd hate to lose Caressa to some term limits. I hate to lose Kevin to term limits. I hate to lose Mitchell to term limits, even though you've only been here a few months, Kevin, or Mitch. I think you'll do a great job, but I'd hate to lose you in a few years because of these term limits. And I don't see a lot of people knocking down the doors to get on the committee. We can barely get the people who currently approved on the board to come to the meetings. So I don't want to limit us in that way.
Okay. Anyone else?
Cynthia has her hand raised.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm also, I think as stated previously, Montavious, I think it's that idea that there's a lot of good people on the board, but I also do think, empathize with what Claude said about having those 6-year terms, because I think it can make it a clear goal for each of us to really kind of, set goals that are within, those timeframes. And I think also one of the goals should be, how do we get new people on board that care, right? I think that not just because we're no longer serving in our position doesn't mean that we can still advise, or doesn't mean that we can still be involved in the task force in another way. I do support the idea of having some time limit, because at least personally for me, I work good with datelines and timelines, and I think that also kind of helps me keep myself grounded to the work that we see happening in front of us, and also I think it helps us really pass the baton to somebody, and I think be that in our constant mind of who's coming next. So that's my take on that.
Can I respond to that quickly? Unless somebody
Sure,
else has.
yes, please.
In the analogy you just used, Cynthia, a baton passing, only one person can have the baton at a time. So somebody necessarily will have to step off the racetrack. That is not similar to what we have here, because there's a lot of batons to go around. Anybody who wants to be on the board can be on the board right now. We're not at capacity. We've never been at capacity. So if new people want to come to the board, it's not an issue that there's, all these old people won't get off the board so new blood can come in. It's just that, people aren't signing up for the board. So if you impose these term limits, we have double issues. One, we don't got people knocking down our doors to be on the board, because if they did, we would put them on the board because we got space. And then two, you're going to lose, the people with, this wealth of knowledge and wisdom and experience from being on the board to this term limit. So again, this is another reason why I don't think.
I do want to.
If I may,
I
actually don't think that it's an issue right now of filling the group. It's an issue of the very fact that some people who are not in these current positions, Montavious, are not showing up, and we don't have a way to actually ask that they move on respectively because of lack of contribution. James, I don't know if you were going to say something to that effect.
No, I just want to add that, I mean, there is interest. There are probably half a dozen to a dozen people who have indicated interest in joining the task force. I think some of the discussions have been trying to represent different perspectives of the community in an equitable way. So if it's relevant to the conversation, maybe that's just as much a question of, is the size of the group that's being discussed in the legislation the size that you want, if knowing that there is some demand.
I think that the size of the group is, to me, the size of the group is fine. The problem that exists is that we don't really have a cord to pull the bag out to say, okay, what are the expectations for contributing to this group, showing up, etc., when we could make way for other people. If we have staggered starts and pass the baton, there are some people that may move on, but that doesn't mean that they can't be present and active contributors to this group at the same time.
Sure.
It's a public meeting. We have advisors, and we often, we're having good, healthy conversations and welcoming the public. And it could include someone who may just be passing the baton, so to speak. Like, what are the real implications of that?
Yeah. One, I'd like to say this is fun. This feels like democracy and just like debate on the floor. This is good stuff. So I've heard two concerns that have prompted people to say we need these term limits. One being we need new blood on the board, and two, Carissa, you just said that you want a mechanism to get people who aren't showing up off the board. Both of these issues are going to be solved by term limits. But I think there are other ways to solve both of those issues. One, James, apparently I'm wrong on this, but I didn't think, we had a big backlog of people who want to be on the board, given that we have board seats open and people aren't filling them. And two, I'll put myself in this. I don't want to be kicked off the board after 6 years because this, policy of kicking people off the board after 6 years was really used to get the bad actors off. You're, catching up to good actors, kicking them off too by the same policy. So we can have a different policy, and the bylaws that says, you miss 3 meetings a year, you're off the board or something like that. So we address your problem, Carissa, like that. And I feel like we still have already addressed the problem of getting new blood on the board, because I don't think that's an issue right now.
So this is Claude again. I don't have real strong feelings about this, but just speaking personally, I'm the kind of guy who has a hard time saying no when I'm asked to renew. So I like the idea. When I was on the Milwaukee Christian Center board after 9 years, we had a 9-year term limit. I was able to say, hey, I've done my part, and now it's not to say I've not forgotten about them, but I still get involved with them, but I'm not on the board anymore. So that's my main issue there, is it gives people an out. But I don't have any strong feelings. If Montavious feels strongly about this, I don't want to push it. So I don't know if anybody else has any comments.
I appreciate a term limit. Perhaps it's a little bit more, but I think that, you also have the opportunity to groom people to be, that next person. And I also really just don't think that just because you exit the board, it doesn't mean that you can't be influential and I've never known this group not to be open and accepting of advisory from the public at large and other like people who are very close to similar topics. So maybe it's just, where are we now with term limits? We don't, you just ask, you're asked essentially if you want to be a part of it, and you could be a part of it for life, correct, James?
You trailed off there a second, but it's I believe there's 3-year terms that renew automatically unless somebody wants to exit.
Yeah.
But you still have to be sworn in at each time.
I'll be honest, my experience is the mayor, we make it easy for the mayor. And not that we want to make his job or her job any harder, but we make it easy for them when we just keep accepting reappointments.
Well, I would say
there should be some limit at some point, I guess, would be my, maybe it's 9 years. And Montavious raised another point. There is nothing in this enabling legislation that talks about how do we remove a member from the board. So maybe we should add that if a board member misses, 3 consecutive meetings or 5 out of the year, something like that, or whatever it is, that they're off. We could do that.
Yeah, I believe Kathy told us that should be a bylaw thing, not a enabling legislation thing. But you are correct. We should have a mechanism for that. Just not in, or excuse me, not in legislation, but the bylaw.
That makes sense.
Rebecca, you had your hand raised before, and I apologize for not catching up with you. I see it again, so please go ahead.
That's quite all right, because I did post my question, my original question in the chat about current members. Is that 9 current members, or does that also include unfilled positions, members, seats? But I wanted to add to the discussion about term limits and also how active a member is, and just looking at the Equal Rights Commission. So they have term limits of 3 years, and before they would be considered to be reinstated for another 3 years, we have to provide a report on their attendance, whether or not then if they would be considered for reinstatement for another 3-year term.
But that 3-year term, that's ongoing. There's no hard cutoff. You're looking at it, but it's contingent upon attendance, essentially.
To be reinstated for another 3-year term, yes.
But you could be reinstated for 10 3-year terms, is what she's asking.
They're not limiting that.
Okay.
Although, that's something that there has been discussion, should they do that, but I don't think anybody stayed that long. I think the longest member they have is someone that's been on the commission for 7 years now, and she's ready to leave though.
Well, I think that it seems like we could be more specific about instead of doing a term limit, your time is contingent upon attendance, which fits within the bylaws, that ultimately serves as a stop block for those who are, it supports those who are active, and the concept of those who are, dormant, not contributing, as a way to bring in, just more freshness and ultimately continue to diversify and be relevant. Instead of being really concrete. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, those are 2 different issues. And again, I'm willing to back off, but I want to give you my personal example. I'm also been appointed by the mayor to the City Board of Harbor Commissioners. and I've now served about 12 years. We've got members, and they're all good people, but we've got members who've been on the board for 24 years. You know, to me, I think that's a little too long. And frankly, the person I was appointed to replace was someone who felt like he should get to serve forever and was not happy about the fact that the mayor didn't reappoint him. So, you know, again, I think the term limit gives an out for that situation. So that's the last I'll say about it. Maybe we should make it 9 years, but I'm hearing from Carissa and from Cynthia that they are kind of partial to the term limits as well. So I'm going to make a motion, since we're considering this only. We could end the consideration. I'm going to make a motion that we should limit it to 9 years.
Okay. Those are who are, well, we could do that. Or here's a question. Should we see, I'm looking at the time, and I'd like to move on to another topic around quarter after, which is coming up soon. There's a lot more of this document that we might want to discuss. Should we uphold Claude's motion, or do we need to table this and go back to work group?
I second Claude's motion I second the motion so we can open it for voting.
Okay. Well, then, so the motion again was to expand the term limits, or term maximum, I should say, to 9 years. Was that correct?
Well, not expand. Right now, there's no term limits, so it would be to establish.
Establish a maximum of 9.
Yeah.
9.
That's the motion.
And Claude or Montavia seconds the motion.
Second.
Any of those oppose?
Can I oppose the motion? I second it, or is that allowed? Okay.
Yes,
then
yes, you can, is the short answer. So you should call a vote, Carissa.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would say if people are comfortable, just put your vote in the chat, either aye or nay.
Okay.
Whoa, democracy. Love it.
So it looks like it's 3-1 with 1 abstention.
Yep.
Is that right?
Passes.
Okie doke. Well, let's see. I've got a couple more minutes. Just a couple, literally a couple. Maybe I'll give you 4 more, actually. There you go. Does anyone want to talk any further about this, or do we want to vote to move it on to sponsorship?
I have a question first. Are there only 5 members here today?
We have quorum.
Yes, 5 members.
Okay.
So I would make a motion that we adopt it, but subject to some final tweaks that the
Sure.
committee can approve. So we don't have to come back to the full task force.
Sure. Any seconds?
I second.
Okay.
It's Montavious.
Okay.
All right.
Should we put our votes in?
Vote in the chat, please.
Okay. It's approved. Okay. Sorry, was somebody saying something? Okay. We will move on to item number 5. This is kind of a fun one. So before we one of the big ticket items that I feel is living within the policy and projects work group, which is snow removal. I'm really interested in seeing some essentially a more process oriented output from that group, and I've expressed that to Nicholas. And I don't want to put Cynthia on the spot, but Nicholas has asked Cynthia, at least in the interim, to become work group lead. And Cynthia, I'm not sure if you have had a chance to ponder on that a little bit more. But I wanted to share with you all essentially a model document of a subcommittee for the Oakland Department of Transportation's Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Because there's a couple of things that I personally see happening within that work group. One of them is probably a deeper level dive on a particular policy that you're most interested in, which I believe is ICE's snow removal. But another thing is how to assess projects, particularly major projects, and advise on them. And I did, let's see if I can share that with you. But I'm going to try, as I'm sharing that with you, I don't know if Cynthia, if this is like the way to do this, but Cynthia, I don't know if you have taken per Nicholas's request. I know we talked to you before, so I wanted to check back in.
Yes, thank you. Can you guys hear me? I know my internet is kind of okay. Yes, no, and I was able to chat with Nicholas too, and I do think that we have a very strong group to work with, and that I'll happy take over that duty that Nicholas had previously. I know that there's a lot of juice in the group, and I know I'm speaking for Claude here, because I know that first meeting that we had, we were very engaged, and I think that as we move forward with that group, I really look to have more of those conversations and sit down and really write down what needs to happen for all the different projects that we want to focus on moving forward.
Okay, so something that I would really like to see happen is definitely establishing a meeting within the month before, so before the end of the month. And forgive me, I am looking for this this document here. I did share it with you, I think, over the weekend, but essentially what it is a way to record your work group meetings, and also a way to assess projects. And Cynthia, I'm wondering if you have that document available, and we could just take a look at it and discuss this a little bit before we move on to another topic. Yeah, sorry.
Carissa, I think I have it. Again, I may not know it really well, but if you want me to share the screen, let me just
Sure,
double.
that would be great. Now, keep in mind, this particular document isn't the. It is a model document. It doesn't have to. We don't have to live through it entirely. We don't have to model it to the T. I just wanted to share it with Cynthia, share it with Kevin too, and then now share it with all of you, in terms of how other subcommittees work through project assessment. In addition to, in this case, it would be policy, which is a little bit more long term. Rebecca, you had your hand up, please. Rebecca, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I was trying to lower my hand before turning on my microphone. I've kind of stepped in on a few things only because as part of my position, and actually it really dies in as well with the Pedestrian Task Force. So I reached out to Danielle Rodriguez back in, I want to say August, maybe July or August, that they include persons with disabilities as part of their training for the drivers for snow removal and some of their concerns. And so they were going to bring in some individuals to do that. And that's something that, again, could tie into the Pedestrian Task Force. But I just went ahead and stepped in and did that because I thought it was very important that happened. But as far as like plan review, I find it very interesting, and I just wanted to know, and I don't know if maybe Mike Amston or James could answer this. Would that be a buy-in by DPW?
Mike has left the call. What's the specific question, would you say?
Project or plan review.
Yeah, I don't know if we can speak for all of DPW. We could definitely kind of say that where it would be, I guess, helpful and appropriate on like multimodal unit projects. And I think we would be very open to that, depending on the level of effort for the task force or for the or for the working group. But if that's the question, if you're talking more between like DOA and DPW, I think that's probably a separate conversation.
No, strictly for the Pedestrian Task Force. That's it. Thank you.
I think that's a really good question, Rebecca. One of the motivations that I've had in introducing a model like this, and I want to be really clear, like for instance, if you look at the projects, section where it says projects are prioritized and selected to review by the committee using a number of factors, I actually see this as a very broad touch on actual evaluation. But I definitely had major projects in mind, not because I don't think that connecting with multimodal is critical and important, because I think it is, but also I think that, for instance, major projects is a really distant and critical aspect of the DPW that is kind of a bit of a black box to a lot of advocates and people who are interested in these issues that are really close to them and who are most civically engaged. And also Megan O'Connor had reached out, who is a liaison for major projects, in, high impact paving, and wanted to figure out how this group can be more relevant and supportive of major projects. So I'm just throwing this out here to touch back with Cynthia. And I told Cynthia, I told you I wanted to bring some information for you to meditate on and think about how you might imagine this work group functioning better. And I've also, you may have been following some email feeds, but I've asked for an informational interview with this particular these particular subcommittee members for the Oakland Department of Transportation, just so we may learn some things. And you could springboard off wherever you want to go. But I'm curious to hear what people have to say. I know that Megan O'Connor said that she would be happy to sit in on this informational interview as well. So there you go.
Is this document available to us now in the shared files?
That's a good question. I can put it there today.
Okay. And James, are you able to make it larger on the screen? For those of us who've served for many years, it's hard to read. There you
I thought you had bionic eyes, Claude.
go. There you go.
Tell
That's
me
much
that.
better.
Yes, I got an opportunity to go over this, Carissa, and I think that I'm all for not recreating the wheel when there's something out there already that we know it's working well for cities that are, similar to Milwaukee. And I think part of it it's too is like how do we embed a process like this, that can be brought up to the larger group for voting. So I personally appreciate this a lot because I think that it's very clear on the different factors that I think will can definitely give direction and lead on the on the projects and sort of like the larger projects that that we'll be working on for review and for recommendations. So I personally like this document a lot.
And as you scroll down, you'll see that there's also a record of these group meetings, projects that have been reviewed. So that's really good. I would love to see something very similar to this, but again, I'd love to also give the work group, as a work group lead, no matter if it's you or if it's Nicholas or whoever it is, I really want that individual to take agency over how they assess projects and how they, and policy. So if anyone has any more thoughts and ideas for Cynthia, please discuss them now, but also keep in mind, Cynthia, please try to get a meeting scheduled with everybody together so that we can figure out, provide some concepts and some ideas as with this being a springboard. But as I said too, you may all want to try to sit in on a meeting, this informational meeting, instead of me, and learn as much as you can to decide if this is the right path for you. But at the end of the day, something's very critical. One, I absolutely need to have standing meetings for this work group. Absolutely need to be assessing projects, maybe, with a more fleshed out explanation. And three, something more specific is that as we've learned from Danielle Rodriguez, the operations director the operations director at DPW, is budget season for operations comes up around in the month of March. So it will behoove you all to figure out what steps you need to take to affect policy in regards to snow and ice removal. And it's not just, I don't think it's just going to be one letter, it's going to be a process. And I think that she's a great resource for letting you know how much, they really need to be highly functioning. She seems very amicable. So there's kind of a deadline embedded in that. And I do think since the last letter that was composed, it seemed like we really need to go back to the drawing board a little bit and have some greater consensus. So if anybody has any more thoughts and ideas on that, that's cool. Otherwise, we can also move on. But if I can get that commitment from you, Cynthia, that would be great. At least the first two items, I think.
Okay, so for that, do we make a motion for that and amend?
I don't think it's necessary. I think unless other people, I would say maybe the only motion would be a transfer and work group lead, but maybe it's not necessary since Nicholas reached out to you to help him in between. I don't know what anyone's thoughts are on that.
Well, I'll make it easy. I'll make a motion that Cynthia should be appointed as the chair of this committee. No one wants to.
I second. I don't know if I can.
I think, Caressa, you can also appoint chairs to subcommittees.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, I will appoint Cynthia as work group lead for project and policy, the work group project and policy lead. And I'll say in the interim, that's to be more specific. Montavious is essentially says, aye, good choice. Okay. Cynthia, thanks. You're helping us out immensely. I believe in you.
One
Cynthia's-
quick note on that. If you do decide, Cynthia, that you want anyone from DPW or anyone else from the city to kind of help advise, just reach out to me and I can help make sure that staff are available and can help schedule. Just let me know.
Thank you, James.
Okay. So sorry, I need to pull this agenda up again to look at the timestamps. But what's going to happen? I did reach out to Mitch and Montavious about the upcoming budget. It's budget amendment season. It's budgetary season. Aside from ARPA funding, there's an opportunity to essentially jockey for more funding. And I did ask these guys to talk about the position of this group and advising on budgetary increase or sustaining within the multimodal capital budget. Ask them to interject towards the end of our time here. But if you all want to take the floor now, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. So a little background is that currently, or for last year, the DPW multimodal unit had a capital budget of, I believe, $1.2 million and is currently proposed to receive $1.3 million in the 2022 capital budget. And we wrote a short letter proposing to increase this to $2 million for 2022 using the increase in revenue from parking meters that was implemented in 2018, or partially implemented, I should say. The draft of the letter is here. Let me share it. I don't know. That's all I've got. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Montavious or Caressa.
Yes, I'll add that this ask was born out of what I feel is one, necessity, but two, also like striking while the iron is hot. I think reckless driving is just at the top of a lot of people's mind these days. That's really the number one quality of life issue here in the city. And I think a lot of the older people's ears are open and they see it in their community, like how destructive it is. We just had a death last night, or was that Monday night? Pedestrian crossing National Avenue, some reckless driver. So it's on people's mind, so I think this will be a time to ask for more money. And what Mitch and I don't think we would say don't ask for more money. what we wanted to open up the floor to discussion for is how much money we should ask for. And I think Mitchell has come up with a good idea to fund it, so we're not just asking for money and saying, you guys come up with where it's going to come from. But he actually has a revenue plan for it.
If I could just take off my staff assistant hat and put on my DPW hat a little bit for a second here. I think it's worth maybe discussing whether it's appropriate to spell out the multimodal unit. Tackling reckless driving and implementing complete streets is far broader than just a unit of 5 to 6 people. So I think I guess I would just recommend maybe taking a close look at the wording and how you're encouraging, I guess, broader the Department of Public Works and other departments to be really elevating your priorities.
So Montavious asks, who else besides multimodal? I guess my hand raised, and James, you can perhaps help answer this question, is more specifically, what other capital improvements line items can be worked into that ask? And I would assume it's just like major, like for instance, like major projects, but I don't know.
Right. That was kind of the source of that, was that, DPW multimodal does it well. And that's kind of their focus, is those specific kinds of interventions and infrastructure. I mean, we could request that it is, major streets, or I don't know. That's maybe the only other one that might fit. But if the budget breaks out multimodal unit, that's kind of what made sense. So I guess, do you have a suggestion on that?
Yeah, that probably wouldn't be my place to recommend, just because the Commissioner of Public Works puts together and works with the mayor's office to put together sort of the budget request. So that those conversations have kind of already happened. But I would say, considering that it's more than probably just certain types of interventions, but that there are opportunities on other project types to be realizing more complete streets, whether it is, state or federally funded or aided projects, locally funded projects. I guess maybe more focused on like what your outcomes are and like what you would like to see might be one way to approach it, as opposed to individual line items. I mean, it's not bad to call out certain line items. I think it's just, we, to be frank, like we have pretty limited capacity. And so to just assume that the money itself going through our small group is going to have the impact or even the the impact that you'd like to see we might not be set up for that currently. So kind of looking at the broader picture of how can you, what are you asking for? What would you like to see, especially in, one budget cycle?
Yeah. So maybe it's a matter of being more, like you could go to a different department, but we're more explicit about how the money, we'd like to see the money spent, for instance, in relationship or complementary to complete streets, or like our local policies and plans. I don't know if that's kind of, a better route to take. And I'm not gonna lie, I was thinking, I wonder if you could spend that money, but I still think it's actually quite modest compared to my like 30% increase ask. I was like, Montavious, Mitchell, we need like a 30% increase. And we have seen it. We have seen around a 6% increase from last year, which I think is not terrible. But I think that this is a modest ask. Maybe being more explicit, and you can look at that capital budget item, doing a little bit more investigation as to where that might be most beneficial, and also how do you extract the most accountability from other people other than a multimodal.
Yep, I thank you for mentioning that, James. We had not thought of that about the capacity issue of multimodal. Instead, we should think about what outcome we want from this money. So thank you for bringing that up. Do we know, Chris, what kind of time constraint we have on this?
So budget amendment days are October 28th and 29th. They're coming up soon. If you wanted to direct this towards, let's say, another DPW department and be very explicit about it being complementary to local policies and plans, you're going to want to, adjust the wording a little bit and find yourself a sponsor as soon as possible.
I just add this Friday from basically starting at 9 a.m. is the Finance and Personnel Committee's budget hearing related to DPW infrastructure and transportation. So, that would be a good resource for seeing what is being proposed and the kind of questions that finance and personnel have for DPW. I dropped the link to the
Great.
budget schedule in the chat.
I think that would be helpful for you guys.
I do appreciate the perspective. I don't know. I think the goals mentioned in the draft letter are quite clear, that it's about reckless driving and enabling better bike and pedestrian improvements. If a committee or the Common Council want to change where it goes, if they feel like it could be better served elsewhere, or the DPW commissioner feels it could be better used elsewhere, that's fine. I don't know that it's necessarily worth our time to go super back and forth. I'm obviously open to edits or suggestions on it, but if the meeting is this Friday and budget stuff is going to be happening before we meet next, I don't know. I'd rather figure it out sooner than later.
Okay, well, would you like to make a motion?
I need a motion to send it out as is with some names filled in. Or I guess I'm not clear.
Well, I guess you'd make a motion to, it would be that, and, essentially to find the sponsor.
I mean, yeah, whatever. I don't, know the protocol. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we could take some time, and I don't know how, because we can't wait until the next meeting is what my concern is. Sounds like Chris and Mitch's concerns are. But I don't want to leave here without saying the committee will support, or the task force will support something going out to find a sponsor to ask for more money. I think what James and Chris have said, we need to identify a specific project, because there's lots of things that would improve bike and pedestrian, issues in Milwaukee. We want bike lights at the corners, at intersections. That's one thing that would improve, but I don't think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, some infrastructure in the street, something like that. We can find out what those capital budget items already are Friday and say, yeah, we want to throw some more money at that. And that's something they could vote on with the actual tangible outcome. But we would need to know what that is now, so we could vote on adding that language to our letter. So not quite sure how we can proceed.
Can you put the letter up again, or?
I posted the link in the chat. I
Okay,
can
I'll
share
go,
it again.
I'll go to the chat box, I'm sorry. Okay, I got it here.
Well, I personally think that this is a modest and appropriate ask, and I would definitely vote today to approve of the ask. And in terms of where it is assigned to, I'm I'm okay with some post thought in terms of where that lands.
Sure. I mean, I'm fine voting on it too. I don't like, as long as the broad language and asks are something we're all comfortable with, and you're okay kind of
So
carrying
can I
it to
make a
where it needs
motion?
to go.
Let me make a motion that we approve that this letter be sent out and authorize Carissa and Mitchell to put it into final form as they see fit. And rely on their judgment.
I'd add Montavious to that as well, but otherwise I'll
Okay.
second.
I'll add Montavious to my motion then as well.
Are we good to vote then?
We're voting in the
Yep.
chat.
Okay.
Okay, motion has been approved. Cool. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left. I've left this portion up for news from anyone. I've got a couple of pieces of news. One, I'm super excited to see that multimodal unit that includes, well, essentially the Complete Streets implementation team has released the 2020 Health and Equity Report. Really big shout out to Kate Reardon. I know she's on the call, who's been putting all this together so it looks really pretty and lovely, with, I think, support from her intern. Kate, I don't know if you want to just say anything about it, if I'm missing any shout outs, or maybe drop the link in the chat too. But I'm just happy that it came out, and I'm happy that you support such good work. Thank you for giving this a chance. Kate might be away, but yeah.
Sorry,
So
I'm here. Was having clicking the wrong thing, of course. But thank you for the kind words. Thank you for your support. I'll put a link to it in the chat. I hope you all get a chance to check it out. It really is a team effort, and it's great to have folks like Carissa helping out and pushing us to do things like making our annual report a health and equity report. So thanks.
Awesome. I mean, and Kate, just for those who do not know what this is, can you just like really quick tell people what the Complete Streets Health and Equity Report is?
Yeah, really quick. So with the Complete Streets policy, we're required to do an annual report each year. There's a couple things that are called out in the policy that we're supposed to report on. Bob Schneider at UWM actually put together this great data matrix of additional data for us to collect. So we report on internal changes to policies and procedures, which are really important, but then also the external impacts of our policy. So changes in design to streets, and then also changes in activity, like counts of people biking and walking, measurements of speeds at the same 20 intersections each year. So a lot of cool stuff that will be really great for us to see long term what impact the complete streets policy and other policies have on the city.
Cool. Thank you. There's the link. Oh, she beat me. Fast draw, Kate. Also, we have the Complete Streets, Safe and Healthy Streets team has just finished our Streetwise Toolkit, which will be coming out digitally before the end of the year. It's already been sent to print in English and in Spanish. And I don't know if anyone has any updates or information, events that they want to share right now. I'm going to pull it up for you to just show you what it looks like. And while I do that, if anybody has, you can throw in any information you want to about anything you got going on related to the world of safe and healthy streets.
Cynthia has a couple.
Take it away, Cynthia.
Thank you. So there was one coming up for this month of October. I'm putting it on the chat, and this is just from some partners that are putting this together at the Forest Home Cemetery. So there will be a Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead walk inside the cemetery, which I think we should encourage all of our group to go and maybe walk it out a little bit. So that'll be on the 30th of October. And then also, I don't have the link with me right now, but the second one, which will be also that day, will be trick-or-treating on National Street in Silver City for the kids. And I'm actually going to be participating on that, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys know what is coming up so we can be out and about before the snow gets here. And you know, I'm sure we'll still be walking, but I think at least for now, those are really cool events to look forward to.
Excellent. Could you do us a favor and share the event again with the member body for Dia de los Muertos? And I will bother everybody so we can do some team bonding.
Yes, I can certainly say, no, I added on the chat, but I can send that out on an email to all the group.
Cool. Anyone else have anything to share? Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can. I might have shown you all.
Could I just ask Cynthia, is this a fundraiser for some organization, the 5K run, or just an event to go out?
Sorry, can you guys hear me? Sorry. Yes, yeah, so it's an event that is, I know a couple friends of mine have been putting together, and the fact that I think that it's a Forest Home makes it so much more cool. So, but it's not necessarily a fundraiser, I don't think. I know that there's different folks on there that are public allies, so 16th Street, UMOS, Mercado MKE, Forest Home Cemetery, who are on the planning committee. So it'll be from 10 to 3, but the actual run will be at 9 a.m. So it's a little early maybe for some, but I think it's pretty doable.
So I'm looking at the website, and it looks like there is a $25 entry fee. So I was just wondering who that benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that would be for if you want to participate in the actual competition. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm just gonna share this with you all really quick. I've got crazy tabs. Can you see my screen? Okay, so this is the toolkit that's coming out. It's being printed as we speak, and I'm so excited about it. It's literally like a 5x6 little booklet, and this is something that also Multimodal has been working on with the Bike Federation under the Safe and Healthy Streets grant, which was an MCW grant that just ended. So we got everything out to the press in time. And what's going to be inside of that is, let's see. Oh, that's my email. Come on, Caressa. Now you're just going to full on tour. Oh, here we go. So that's the cover. On the inside, you're going to have an acknowledgement, and then we have a benefits legend that goes next to illustrations of different infrastructure. And as you can see down here, you have elements of cost and benefit in relationship to that iconography. And then we also have a picture. So you have an illustration and a picture. And we hope that really appeals to different ages. And also you have a description of what those particular infrastructure items do. Now, this is just like a soft touch on an introductory to infrastructure. So you're not going to know exactly how much something costs, but you can have an idea of what, just like a rough idea. So you're not entering into a space maybe just totally, blindly when it comes to advocating for the things that you need. So this is actually modeled off of a similar publication called Active Streets LA, which has a very similar cost benefit guide that we really liked. And we said, why reinvent the wheel? Our community needs something like this too. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have at least 3 languages published online. But right now we are going to have, like I said, English and Spanish available and try to get them out to libraries and other community partners to share, especially when street projects arise or in intervention-based situations. So look out for that. And I don't have anything else to share. I was going to move to adjourn unless anyone has anything else.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And as always, you know where to find me. You can bug me anytime.